Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Institute of South Asian Studies, Singapore, I thank you for your presence at this panel session, which will be chaired by Mrs. Sunita Kohli. The theme for this session is people power, social entrepreneurship and change. Without further ado, may I invite the following persons on stage. Mrs. Sunita Kohli, Chairperson, Board of Trustees of Save a Mother and President, K2 India. Ms. Sarah Hashwani, Chairperson, Hashu Foundation and Director, Corporate Governance and Planning, Hashu Group, Pakistan. Mr. Sreenivas Narayanan, Founder and Managing Director, Assist Asia, Philippines. And Captain Elmo Jayawardena, Founder and President, Candleaid Lanka, Sri Lanka. Please come to the stage. The chairperson for this session, Ms. Sunita Kohli, is a highly regarded civil society leader in India and is the chairperson and founder trustee of Umang, a non-government organisation that works to improve the quality of life of thousands of street and slum children in India. Mrs. Kohli is also a board member of Save a Mother, an NGO which is dedicated to decreasing maternal and infant mortality rates in 1,200 districts in India. I now invite the chair, Mrs. Sunita, to conduct the session. Thank you.
Thank you for those very kind words. I thank the Institute of South Asian Studies for inviting me to chair this session. But I'm here as the moderator as well as a panelist. And this session is on people's power and social entrepreneurship as an agent of change. Now, as an agent of change, it is undoubtedly deniable, but what is social entrepreneurship? I think in its most simplistic definition, it is something which, where people find proper and appropriate solutions to social problems. And the appropriate thinking can come from many, many different disciplines, many, many different spheres. And that could be, you know, large and new, old and old, religious, secular, from non-profit, for-profit, or a hybrid of these many. Now, the term social entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurs has only really come into the English lexicon from the 80s and the 90s. But that does not mean that social entrepreneurship has not existed for many, many decades, in fact, for many centuries. And the most recent examples that I would give, I'm an Indian, so I will give an example from India, because that's the country I know best, is say somebody like Ila Bhatt, who started Seva. And Seva is where she started this group of self-employed women. And once they were self-employed, they became empowered. Once they were economically empowered, that led to better livelihood for their families, better education, better health facilities. Similarly, from Bangladesh, I take this example from Bangladesh because I've had the privilege of meeting Mr. Muhammad Yunus, who started Grameen Bank, where micro-lending, and especially micro-lending to women, because I think 92 or 93% was lent to women who never defaulted on giving back their loans, repaying their loans. So these are examples, and of course we can go back to several other people, but people like them demonstrate the enormous synergies and benefits when business principles are unified with social ventures. I think that is the operative way of how social entrepreneurship works. And as we all know, that India is not only a very large country in terms of geography, in terms of demographics, but it is also a very complex society. It is also very pluralistic. There are many cultures that exist, that it has been rightly said, there are many centuries that coexist in this India. So our problems are myriad, magnified, but yet in this population of 1.3 billion people, there are 3.3 million non-for-profit working organizations. And I think that is a large number. And that speaks for the vibrancy of civil society in our region. And it also speaks for the sort of empathy which I personally think, and many people like me also think, that empathy is the bedrock of democracy. However flawed a system democracy might be, but we have yet not found a better alternate system of governance. And in India, presently, our present government certainly believes in inclusive growth. This morning we heard a very articulate talk by our finance minister, Mr. Chidambaram, where he spoke about that the 300 million people who live in poverty cannot be marginalized. And so our delivery systems might presently be flawed, might have porosity, but it is not that these people have not been, that they are not being included in our legislations. So empathy is what drives social entrepreneurs. I would now like to introduce my co-panelists. I start with Sarah Hashwani. Sarah Hashwani is the chairperson of the Hashu Foundation, which was established in 1988 with a mission of empowering women and weak and vulnerable sections of society in Pakistan. She has also established her own project called Plan B, and she will speak more on this, and she will do a presentation after I finished introducing all the rest of the panelists. And this works in the northern portions of parts of Pakistan, which is a very male-dominated society, am I right? And it's a very conservative society. So beekeeping is one of the few employment avenues that is open to women. And she will speak about how successful they have been. The next panelist will be Sreenivas Narayanan, and who is the founder and managing director of Assist Asia, which is an innovative and self-sustaining non-profit which is focused on project management and capacity building. He leads a very dynamic team, and he has launched several private and social ventures, which he'll speak about. And most recently, he launched something called Asian NGO, which is Assist's new social venture, which is a media platform dedicated to the development sector across the Asia-Pacific region. And Elmo, Captain Elmo Jayawardena, is also a social entrepreneur. And I would say he's a catalyst because he thought of this very innovative scheme of taking money or making people who had money, allowed them to be generous to those who did not have money. And since he's a pilot and an instructor and he has flown all over the world, so he gathered Sri Lankans from all over. He will speak more on this. So may I first invite Sarah to do her presentation. Would like to do it from here.
Thank you, Sunita. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's an afternoon session, so we have to keep it high energy. So we make sure everybody stays awake and we make it an exciting panel. Before I begin, I'd just like to start with a quote that I find very inspiring. Let's change it. Okay. So it reads, "In terms of power and influence, you can forget about politics. There is no more powerful institution in society than business. The business of business should not be about money. It should be about responsibility towards social innovation. It should be about public good, not private greed. Such businesses are the vanguard of the new paradigm." This particular quote really inspires me because I strongly feel that there is a very strong collaboration and link that needs to be built between the business community and the social sector, which unfortunately has a big gap today in Pakistan and I think in most regional countries. Approaches to social entrepreneurship. When we met as a panel yesterday, well, as a group yesterday, one of the key things we immediately understood is that there's no one definition of social entrepreneurship. You know, an NGO defines it differently, a business defines it differently, an individual defines it differently. I think the important matter at the end of it all is why are we doing what we're doing? And I think at the bottom of it, we're doing it to have some form of a social impact. So whether it's an individual or a business or an NGO, or government per se, the end result is that we're trying to improve the quality of life and have a positive social impact, whether it's in the education sector, the health, or the agriculture, no matter which sector it is. So I think whilst we talk about the notion of social entrepreneurship today, we shouldn't forget why we're doing what we're doing, which is for the impact, which I feel is the most important part of the discussion. So social entrepreneurship in Pakistan. Entrepreneurship in its modern definition has remained very limited in the history of Pakistan, and the growth of small-scale industry in Pakistan is lower than most regional averages around the world. So I'm not going to go through these statistics which are on the board, but in Pakistan generally, the small-scale businesses are just entering the market at about 2.7% per year, which is very nominal. In Pakistan, and I think globally, we have been implementing social enterprise models for decades. And like Sunita mentioned, it's just something now which we are further defining in the last 10, 15 years. We're giving it further definition and defining more of its frameworks. And I think that that concept of definition is very helpful because it will enable us to scale up these ventures and also incorporate and build collaboration and linkages once there's clarity on what we're doing. I'd just like to give a quick example. You know, my family were in the hotel business in Pakistan, and in the early 90s, you know, my father had this dream to build a resort hotel in this part of the country where, you know, you wouldn't imagine there would be tourists one day. It was a mountain. He just went to drop his daughters to boarding school and thought that, wow, this is so picturesque. This area of the country should have a resort. And he built this resort, not having clarity whether this will ever make a profit one day, or whether you know, it will even be a sustainable project. But so sometimes the factors that lead you to make decisions is not just about profit. It's also, there's an element of patriotism, which encourages you to want to create jobs and help the local farmers and help the local landowners. So similarly, in that way, you know, this is something my father did, but I don't think in those days he termed it as social enterprise. It's just the way he approached business. Similarly, there are hotels in other parts of the country which don't make money, but they're also in regions which are very picturesque, touristic, and hopefully in the future those areas will also develop like some other areas have. In terms of entrepreneurship in Pakistan, there's definitely a lot more that can be done from a national collaboration point of view to a national strategy. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, we don't have a coordinated holistic strategy at the government level where the business partners, the NGOs, and the other multilateral organizations can come together and plan together. So it's very difficult to actually, we're all kind of working in isolation. And what something I'm trying to do in my personal capacity and as the chair of the foundation is to have forums where we bring together the multilateral organizations and the NGOs that are working in the domain of social enterprise, because the best way to succeed is to work together. And another best way to succeed is to learn from each other and make sure that we're not duplicating and that we're able to study models that are scalable so that we can address the issues of poverty better. I think I need to go faster. I'm running out of time. Some of the key factors I just wanted to touch upon that prevent entrepreneurs or even social entrepreneurs from entering into the marketplace. So one is awareness. There's a huge difference between the rural and the urban poor, and it becomes even more marked when education and gender are factored in. Many are unable to associate their work and livelihoods with the concept of entrepreneurship. So a milkman, for example, is not able to link what he does to the fact that it can be an enterprise. So there is a gap there in terms of how they interpret what they do. From an education standpoint, unfortunately, our education system does not inculcate the self-belief and the confidence that you can look towards becoming an entrepreneur. Our education system is more geared towards teaching you how to become a follower and not really becoming a leader. So they don't encourage the critical thinking and the absence of monetary and knowledge capital. Then you have the aspect of there not being a conducive environment. There's a lot of leg pulling and there's a lot of put you down environment, so the environment doesn't really also encourage you. Access to resources, may it be technical or financial resources. And last but not least, the push and fear. So no help or courage to take all that important first step. I'm also involved with an organization called TIE, which stands for the Indus Entrepreneurs. And out of Islamabad, we do a lot of work with the universities to promote entrepreneurship. We also run with Startup Cup a business plan competition throughout the country, where we, the last session we had 450 business plan competitions from around the country, and the top 5 businesses will be selected. They will be mentored and they will be supported financially to establish their businesses. So 2 quick case studies I would like to share. One is linked to the Hashu Group. So back in 2008, we took our hotel procurement from a manual procurement to doing all procurement through an e-commerce portal. For me, this is a very interesting concept, and I wish that other businesses in Pakistan and maybe other parts of the world would look at this as a catalyst towards helping this process of social enterprise. Because when you go on an e-commerce portal, you open up the marketplace. When you open up the marketplace, then it's not just controlled by those who've been supplying to you for the last 20 years, and it opens it up to small-scale entrepreneurs to enter the marketplace. So this can even go down to the extent of buying a pencil or buying paper, or whatever you buy for the hotel industry or any industry that you're in. So it helps the small-scale entrepreneur enter the market. And when we launched this, we saw this happen. Some of the suppliers who were supplying to us for 20 years, they were supplying fruit to one property, were now supplying to Emirates. Some of them started supplying paper to Etihad. Some of them started supplying to other companies within Pakistan. So suddenly they had a greater access to market, and they were able to enter the market on a fair basis. So whilst the entrepreneurs benefit, at the same time, the business also benefits because you reduce your costs. So when we did this, we reduced our costs by about 13%. No doubt there are challenges, but I think it's a great tool, and I always try to promote this for businesses to look at. The second case study is with the Hashu Foundation. We have a women empowerment through honeybee farming project. And I visited the northern areas of Pakistan in 2003. And that was the first time we realized that there are thousands of children out of school. And however, at the same time, there are quality schools available. So we enrolled kids in school, and then we realized that, after 10 years, these kids will have no skills, they'll have no access to jobs, and they're just going to be frustrated. So we have to address the root issue, which is to make families stand on their own feet. Hence, we identified honey as a product to work with. A lot of women farmers had already been trained. So our role was really to set up the supply chain and to link the product to market. So we started as a pilot, and we linked the honey to the hotels we have, and subsequently we've been supplying to our national airline and also to Serena hotels and the supermarkets at large. So very quickly, we have trained over now 1,000 women farmers. We have purchased up to 60,000 kilograms of honey. 1,200 girls and boys are in school as a result of the project. They're spending money on nutrition and healthcare. There's 7,500 dependents who are benefiting from this project. It has had a huge impact in the position of the women in the society, because now these women are equal decision makers in the house. Some of their husbands, interestingly, have left their jobs to scale up the enterprise at home because it makes more money. So there's been a lot of paradigm shifts. And just lastly, we obviously have plans to scale it up. So I just added some pictures in so you could see our projects. You know, we work with a lot of the donor agencies. So this is a training session for the women. This is just another picture depicting training. That's a workshop with the rural women. So lastly, what have been the paradigm shifts? So direct impact on the quality of life, access to opportunities, access to education, healthcare, and better nutrition. Entrance into the marketplace when we talk about the e-commerce models and also with these women social entrepreneurs. Dignity and self-reliance, which is very important. Dignity for any human being is very important. And for the women, equitable status in the household, participation in decision-making, greater self-confidence, and increased respect and position in the community and the family. Thank you. Sorry if I took more than did I take more than my time?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Srini. I'm from Assist Asia. I'm based out of the Philippines. I don't have a presentation, and to follow a very good presentation is always a challenge. But what I'm going to try and do is to try and keep you, give you another dimension to the understanding of social enterprises. I think Sarah, what she mentioned is about the private sector and how they're moving into the social enterprise, not only because Dad himself was a visionary leader who looked at business not just for business sake, but also for patriotism and to develop local economy. I'm going to come from the other end of the spectrum, which is the civil society. The chair today mentioned that there are about 3.3 million NGOs in India, but let me add another number to that. There are about 6 million NGOs in about 10 countries. This is between Southeast Asia and South Asia. I mentioned Southeast Asia because we have about 4 offices in, out of the 10 countries here, and we have another 3 offices in South Asia. So we do as much work in Southeast Asia as much as we do in South Asia. So you have 6 million civil society organizations or NGOs. And the popular definition of NGOs is non-governable organizations or non-governmental. Yeah, so it's non-governmental, of course. Our rule of thumb is, okay, even if 10% of them are active and are acting to their social mission, that's a huge momentum that they could create for change. However, traditionally, civil society has been aid-dependent, grant-dependent, and sometimes they have great intent and are unable to bring them into action because of lack of funding. This is the reason why we started maybe about 10 years ago trying to move civil society who already have a social conscience to become more enterprising, and that is the dimension we are talking about, social enterprise. Here is an institution which is already sort of with a social mission. Now they need to become enterprising and should be self-sustaining. On the other hand, you have the private sector, which are there for business, and business is about market demand, and they would obviously serve the market demand. And in some cases, when the markets are not there, are not as attractive, they may not go into such businesses or such locations, leaving it completely underserved. And that is where civil society or the governments normally step in. But slowly, I think these markets are becoming attractive. The base of the pyramid in this particular case, it becomes more inclusive. And there's quite a bit of the private sector, which is slowly developing, shall I say, in some ways, in many ways, a social mission in its own right. So you have a spectrum, and from one end comes the civil society, which is becoming enterprising, and the private sector, which is enterprising by default, trying to also be extremely socially relevant and socially responsible. So here is that new space which now supports not only a thriving, self-sustaining business, but also supports governments, particularly in South Asia, where the governments, as much as they try their best, is still facing an uphill task of providing inclusive services and businesses to many, many underserved, I would say in the millions, as you would agree. So what we have chosen to do is talk about civil society and to bring them into becoming self-sustaining. There are, as I mentioned, 6 million civil society members, civil society organizations, and I'm talking about official numbers here. They are probably a couple of million we would have missed actually, okay, and these are not Asian. We are talking only 5 countries in South Asia and about 5 countries in Southeast Asia. So what Assist has done over the last 10 years with its 6 offices across the region is trying to work with these civil society organizations, work on their social mission and trying to make them more enterprising in that sense so that they can be self-sustaining. So we've been working with a lot of capacity building projects, either to do 2 things, either to build employability where we provide skills and get people to get jobs, or on the other end do build entrepreneurs. Yeah? What we are trying to challenge them is, of course, try and encourage them to try and be socially responsible. Okay? The social part is to talk about social challenges, environmental challenges, and try to see if you could provide a solution which can address these issues but also make it inclusive at the same point of time. That is why I think our chair was very right in saying that we are all struggling to come up with a proper definition for social enterprise, but I would say let's not waste time on semantics. Anything good done today is much, much better than the thought of doing good sometime tomorrow when you have your semantics right. So in terms of social enterprises, I can speak for certainly some of the countries we've worked in and are continuing to work in, and we've got exceptional case studies and proof saying that it can also be very viable and still be very possible that you can be socially relevant, at the same time do well, either as an entrepreneur or as an enterprise, so that ADB, where since I'm based in Manila, we tend to have a lot of inclusive business forums. It's become sort of the new wave in the last couple of years, maybe up to 5 years ago. ADB is talking about how inclusive we can get, and what is interestingly happening in the region, started by the multilaterals and donors, but increasingly absorbed by the national governments, is also this new level of funding which is now becoming apparent and available. For some of you who might be in the know, you might be familiar with something called impact investment. Yeah? So there's a whole bunch of investment, and there's almost close to $1 trillion available for investment into this social space. You know, you have corporations like Google, you have the Omidyar network on one hand, you have Acumen, Ashoka on the other hand, you have people like KFW, IFC on the other hand, who are coming up with very, very, very small funds, which were usually never considered very attractive, to attract this social enterprise. These young people, not necessarily young, I'm not exactly young, but young people who are thinking that, hey, you know what, I have got my skills, let me do something socially relevant. Now, let me do not only for myself, let me do for the society. Could be small, could be big. It's not always about scale, it's also about depth. So if you are in a small enterprise working on a community which probably only serves about 1,000 families, it's fine, because you're still doing something very, very relevant. Not all business models need to be very replicable and scalable, but if it is possible, certainly it can be taken. What we have done in the last 5 years is bring a lot of this South-South learning actually. So we are bringing like now dried mangoes, which is a delicacy in the Philippines, we are bringing into South India through some project so that people can learn from one another. We are bringing chocolate dipped bananas from Thailand again to India to bring small enterprises to follow that. And likewise, we are bringing businesses and ideas from South Asia to Southeast Asia. I think I've taken my time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm looking towards a very good interaction later. Thank you.
Can I please request Elmo to come to the podium?
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I think no, there's, Sunita is after me, so I'm the one before the last. I would like to talk to you about a different thing than my two worthy colleagues spoke, because they spoke of social entrepreneurship. I like to take it to a different angle, navigate myself to something else. Because to begin with, I do not know very much about how governments deal, because I only dealt with one government. And that also I didn't know what they were doing, because governments are politics, politics is votes, and I keep very far away from all that. Second thing is, big companies, they do CSR projects. I have worked with some of them. And again, sad to say that some of them are more interested in what goes into a glossy page in the annual report than really going down and helping somebody poor. That's a different story again. What I like to tell you is, if we want to have social entrepreneurship, we need to have social entrepreneurs. Now, who is a social entrepreneur? He's a person, in plain language, who gets up from the do-nothing seat and does something to help somebody in need. That's as simple as that. We don't have to go any further. And each and every one of us here is capable of that. Most of you are doing it. Some of you may want to do it. But we are all having that duty to play by the planet we walk in. What happens is, we have the great intention to do that, but we postpone. What do? Hey, I am going to wait till my mortgage is over, then I'm going to do social service. I'm going to help poor people. I'm going to wait till my children finish their university education. Then I will go and do something about helping people. Or I will wait till I retire. Or like anybody else who was doing a profession, when I finish everything, I'm going to do that. Unfortunately, when you finish everything, that's the time to go for the bypass, right? Bypass, then you sit on a wheelchair, you're eating your dinner with a straw. There goes your social entrepreneurship. The time to act, my friends, is now. Not big things, not big things. It was the great Mahatma Gandhi who said, not the exact words I do not know, but it does not matter how small what you're trying to do. But it is so very important that we do it, and that I very firmly believe. Because between the big things we cannot do, you know, the world is full of all kinds of things. Every day I put CNN, BBC, they're killing each other. Can I do anything about it? No. There's nothing I can do about it, right? And the small things we do not do, which is like finding some guy who's in trouble and just helping. You remember, we all know about the starfish that got thrown into the sea, made a difference to that starfish. That's what I'm talking about. Each and every one of us are capable of doing that. And it is us, simple people, who will help other simple people who suffer the multiple burdens of poverty, and that is, to me, is what social entrepreneur is. Now, I don't want to take much time, but I'm going to tell you one story. That's it. Absolute truth. I don't want to varnish anything. I'm not here to varnish, but this is exactly how it happened. I gave a talk some years back, not some years, last year, or 2 years ago, about a bunch of university students. Anybody here who was a university student here? I know everybody's gone to university, but current student, hey, good, right? So I'll talk to you then, right? So there were 40 students, and once I finished the talk, 2 young girls came and said, excuse me, Captain, do you give sponsorships to poor university students in your organization? I said, yes, we do. We have a friend who's very poor, struggling in university. Would you kindly give a sponsorship to her? I said, yes, definitely, I'll try. I gave my card and said, please give me a call and come with your friend, and let's talk about it. Got the call. About a week later, 3 young girls came to the office. I was with my wife. and they come by bus. You know, in Sri Lanka, going in a bus is not like going in Singapore from Raffles City to whatever place. You change about 5-6 buses to go 3 hours, and you sweat, no air conditioning, you stand there, whatever. They came, and this young girl came. I said, just very pleasant girl, her name is Dinusha. And she's not in the Google, unfortunately, otherwise you can Google her, right? And I asked her, can you tell me something about yourself? She said, I got a younger brother in school. My mother is very sick, so I run the shop. I'm the one who cooks, cleans the house. And my father is a person who pours tar on the road. It's a pretty difficult job. Doesn't get paid much. It's a very much of a lower laborer's job. That's what he was saying. And both parents were illiterate. And she's made it to the university. And she was struggling, so the friends brought her for help. So I said, well, I don't want to know anything more. I can assure you, you'll get a sponsorship. But now you can go and fill up the forms. So she was happy. She went in. Half an hour later, she comes beaming from one end to the other. Dinusha is the name, remember. And she said, Captain, I'm very happy, you know, everything is fine. I said, fine, we are very happy. Then she said, Captain, do you people, of course she was talking to me in my language, do you people have a lot of sponsorships to give like this? I said, hey man, the world is not as kind as you think. It certainly is not there like that, but we try to give as much as we can, and especially to people like you. You would not believe, she looked me straight in the eye. Didn't take 2 seconds to make that decision. She said, Captain, please forgive me for what I'm going to say to you. Do not give this sponsorship to me. I have 9 months to go in the university, my last year. I've crawled all the way and I can crawl this. Give this to a first-year poor student. I rest my case. What kind of a social entrepreneur is she? Came 3 hours in a bus to get 2,000 rupees, and she was going to get it, she had it. But thine is greater than mine. I don't think she knew who the thine was going to be. The records book will never show what she did, but I know it, and I'm telling you. When I saw her walking off, I thought, hey, what a lesson she taught me. Who the hell am I, right? What have I done? Look at that girl, the poor girl. Probably the father scolded her, you're a fool, because you were given the money, you didn't take it. My dear friends, I don't have to say anything more. The important thing is we all can't be great people. That's for Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, Mahatma Gandhi. But we can be better human beings. That is what she did. She became a better human being. It is the better human being who becomes a better father, the better human being who becomes a better mother, a better friend, a better son, a better daughter. And it is a better human being who thinks like that, who becomes a social entrepreneur and goes out to help other people in need. Thank you.
Now I wear my other hat as a panelist. There were very kind words that were said. I'm a designer by profession, but I also have this parallel life. I work very intimately with 2 NGOs. One is Save a Mother, which was started by a visionary called Dr. Shiban Ganju, who works out of Chicago. But he comes to India about 6 or 8 times a year. And I'm not going to read out any of the statistics which you all can see, but I'm just going to tell you very quickly a little bit about what is Save a Mother. We have one of the largest rates of maternal death in our country. And what we have managed to do with Save a Mother, firstly, we are in 1,000 villages in 3 districts in UP and 3 districts in Karnataka. And we have got ourselves externally validated by spending 7,000 rupees per year per village. We have brought down mortality rates by 91%. And the model that we follow is so simple, and yet because we have a group of dedicated 7 employees who then find leaders in villages, every village has women who are leaders. They don't need to be able to read or write, but they are able to tell why is a woman dying. I mean, she's dying because there is anemia, there is bleeding, she hasn't got proper help at the time of delivery. And all these, over 90% of these we have found are all preventable deaths. So when Shiban started this, our approach was that we trained health activists in every village. And then this training was repetitive, it was done by songs, it was in a medium that villagers could understand. And so far we have held almost 1,000 meetings in these 1,000 villages where we have been working. And I want to tell you that it is so scalable that actually we can add one village per day, because it is a system that has been devised. Several people have come together to devise the system, but as I said, Shiban is the kind of the force behind all this thinking. And there is literacy. I mean, there is literacy, but there also has to be an awareness of health literacy, which is what prevents all these young women from dying. And these are things that once we teach, we teach the responsibility that you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your unborn child. And so our health activists go from village to village, and they hold regular community meetings, and they teach good health practices. One of the very important ways that we educate are by using flip charts, because these are like comic books. Even if you can't read the matter, people can relate to it by the pictures that they see. So, and we hold weekly meetings. I mean, we are very dedicated in the thing that we follow with repetition. And we make house calls. I mean, our activists make house calls. Again, this is a woman showing another woman who is probably pregnant to, she's teaching her what she owes to herself, how to keep herself healthy. And we also have the interface with public officials, because, as I said again, Mr. P. Chidambaram was saying earlier in the morning that we have a very good system of delivery in rural India. And whilst we make, I'm using his word, glossy hospitals, let us not forget that 1.3 billion people, of which 78% live in villages, they also have to have health services offered to them. And that is, by and large, how social entrepreneurs work in this area. Now, a very important thing that we do, why do we know that we have brought mortality down by 91%? Because we do data collection. And because we do data collection, that now we have become advocates for health policy. And we are putting in papers that we, almost like white papers as to what government can do, or other social entrepreneurs who are much larger than us. Because at the end of the day, we are still a very small non-for-profit. So our impact in 3 years has been the decrease in maternal health by 91%, and in the decrease in mortality rates and newborn deaths by 57%. These, I said, have been externally validated by the Population Foundation of India, because it's all very well for us to claim, but somebody apart from us has to validate these. So now what we are doing is that is incidentally Shiban Ganju in 2 of those photographs. And now we find that once you open villagers up to what are solutions for health, they want more and more solutions. And it opens up their minds to other things. It's almost like, you know, in India you have the opening of the third eye. That is what happens. And we have a large geographic spread. As I said, we are in 2 states and in 6 districts. And our mission is to develop healthcare solutions for the poor. The second NGO that one is involved with, because one was a founder trustee, is the Satyagyan Foundation. I'm not going to spell out everything that you can read, hopefully, on the board, but just to tell you that Satyagyan, we are in Varanasi and its environs, and we are in 570 slum communities. And currently we are working with women, empowering them, doing women's advocacy. And when I say empowering them, because we're teaching them vocational skills and some things that will go towards them increasing livelihoods for themselves. And we have sewing programs, and now we found that, that there's a great demand for beauty parlors, believe it or not, in these slums. So these slum girls who are being taught are opening up or working at little beauty parlors. And we have small sort of projects that we take on. Most recently was educating 157 children. And I just sent out letters to friends, and one of them is Preeti Daura, who is the senior consultant to the chairman of this of SADC, and it was immediate. And what happens is, by just spending 300 Singapore dollars, that is, I believe, the equivalent of 15,000 rupees per year, it becomes a transformational change for that child as far as schooling is concerned, books is concerned, and library facilities are concerned. And I believe, I would like to say that one is very happy to be in Singapore, where something known as the Hub is open, which is going to teach social entrepreneurship. So as a panelist, these are the 2 NGOs that I wanted to speak about. And now quickly, as a moderator again, I would like to ask a question, and then I just want to ask one question, and then I will open it up to the audience for a few questions. Srini, when you spoke about what private individuals can do, or what private social entrepreneurship could do. But why is it that you feel that bureaucrats have not been able to deliver in the same scale?
Well, I think they are trying their best, to say the least, but I think they're by default not trained, or their thinking is not trained to be enterprising. I think the private sector by default is very enterprising. Now the question is, how much are they willing to be socially relevant, and how much profits are they willing to let go so that it can be very social and very scalable. Whereas the governments, I think, still are struggling with policy, because this is a very new concept. Bankers are still looking at funding social enterprises very intimidating, because they use old yardstick of measurement. Even the business schools still teach old business models where you need to be in the rat race. So what we are saying is, win or lose, you'll still be a rat. So how are you going to be socially relevant? So there's going to be some paradigm shift, but it's happening actually already.
Can I then, from your answer, can I please open it to the public? And I would love to have this answer from a Singaporean, because you are aware of the hub that has been opened up, which is teaching social entrepreneurship. And can I have an answer from the audience, please, to this, rather than the answer from us? Okay. Any Singaporean? Very quickly, because we've reached the end of our time. Okay. So we will find out from the internet about the hub. Thank you so much for being such a good audience. Do I have 1 minute? Can I give you 1 minute? Do I have 1 minute?
Sure.
Yeah.
So me and Satya both are very active hub members.
Okay.
And we have one more here called Lara and Sonia. So you want to say something?
Sure. So the hub is a co-working space for focused on social change. So social entrepreneurs who want to find an ecosystem where they can find other like-minded people who are also working on projects which are making social change can go there. And they also have like mentorship programs for these entrepreneurs where they get experts from basically every industry you can think of to help out the entrepreneurs, and they are unimaginably helpful. So if you are starting a social enterprise in Singapore, the hub is the space to be. So,
well, if we started in India, can you please, we will give you all our email IDs.
Yeah.
And you could send it to us. Thank you so much for being such a good audience.
I want it for Pakistan.
Yes, yes.
So, yeah.
Sorry, I'm the only one from India, actually.
Yes.
So, you know, we are all subcontinental people. And sometimes one tends to forget national boundaries. Thank you so much.
Thank you to our panelists for a very insightful and engaging set of presentations there.